Oh my God. I don't know if playing that clip was a good idea. I think I'm going to go again here. Jesus. We're here to discuss The Last of Us. We're going into the spoiler verse. And, well, if you listen to that clip and got all the way through and haven't watched the show and went it, you've just got a whopper one. I did warn you on the other side of it that you were going to get spoiled. But yeah, from here on out, we're going to talk The Last of Us episode 3. We're going to spoil everything that comes up in there. So if you haven't seen it, please go away, come back and listen to us then. If you have seen it and you're worried if we're going to spoil anything in the games, we won't. Don't worry. I will discuss the games. We will allude to it. And we will compare and contrast some differences within the games. We're not going to give away any plot points afterwards. Joining me to break this down, I suppose, in the first episode, we were just kind of having the chats and analyzing it. I suppose after this episode, the only thing we can say is we're here to counsel each other. It is the bassist of FANGCLUB, Kevin Keane, joining me. Just a quick, before we get to the episode, Kevin, just like, I just want to chat. Are you okay? Are you all right to speak about this? How are you recovering after the emotional turmoil that episode drudged up?
I've signed up for therapy, Rick.
Who's Rick?
Sorry.
That's my old evil twin you're getting mixed up with.
Well, my evil twin's not here this week.
Yeah.
Didn't show for his cage match.
I know. Your actual evil twin. There you go.
But yeah, I had to sign up for BetterHelp after that episode yesterday, man. Oh my God. It was just... when you know the storyline in the game going into this, you're like, this is going to be an absolute action-packed kind of chapter of it. And man, what they did. They
just said, no, we're going to do up. Yeah, no, there we go. That's what we're going to do.
I was not expecting to feel like, oh my God, it was wonderful and heartbreaking. And
yes,
just incredible. Yeah,
I think you can just stop it there. And it's like, I wasn't expecting to feel, but like, wow, we all felt. Well, look, I want to break this down. I want to discuss it with you, and I want to discuss some of the changes they made, because there were massive changes, obviously, from the game. But first off, we'll get into the recap, so we're all on the same page about what we're discussing, and we'll kind of relive it all. Don't worry, I won't go too heavy on the emotions. So let's get into it. Last of Us episode 3. We begin with Joel getting all wistful, stacking rocks in memory of Tess, because, you know, bitches love stacking rocks, I guess. Ellie goes full Gene Snitsky on him and tells him it wasn't her fault as the two embark on a 5-hour hike. Joel explains to Ellie how the outbreak began, which transports us back to 2003. We meet Nick Offerman's Bill, who's basically become Ron Swanson if Leslie Knope never entered his life. He had a breakdown and was put on gardening leave from the Parks Department. Everything is coming up Bill, though, in the end of the world, as he avoids the regular army mass slaughtering. So he uses survival prep skills to basically siphon off his entire town to himself. What do you get the man who hates everyone? You get him an electrified fence with flamethrowers, apparently. I haven't even asked him, and I know that he's not here now, but if Bruiser was watching, he saw that as pure heaven. That is actually his ideal setup there. He's not a people person. Bill's solitude was disturbed by one day capturing Murray Bartlett's Frank, though, in his zombie hole. And that was all before dinner. Hi-yo! Frank wangles his way into a free meal and an after-dinner piano performance, at which stage his gaydar is absolutely screaming at him. It was all very stereotypical, really. A bit offensive, to be honest, because nothing says middle-aged closeted gay man like explosive tripwires, to be fair. It's a tale as old as time. We followed them through the years and seen their lives unfold in a kind of typical post-apocalyptic love story. All the classic rom-com beats are here. Like, you know how when you're arguing about how to decorate your murder fence, or how you're trying to have a nice double date while your partner awkwardly starts pointing a gun in your visitor's face? Or how about the time, we've all been through this, where we wake up in the middle of the night to find our partners firing a rifle at the few surviving trespassers that they haven't yet burned to a crisp? How about trading strawberries for guns, or the eventual obvious ending, a dual suicide pact? All your typical bog standard rom-com stuff. It was beautiful, really. In the end, Joel and Ellie arrived too late, as Bill and Frank have already had their last supper, but a note from Bill to Joel encourages him to open his heart to others. And with that beautiful message in the forefront of their minds, Joel and Ellie think about this, process it, and then proceed to rob all of his guns in his car. And that was episode 3 of The Last of Us, a long, long time, aka Up, but with gays and zombies. Kev, Your
It's
thoughts
way
on
more
that
romantic than that. It is far romantic.
I might have undersold the romance of it all. But I need a bit of levity now, or I may just be totally depressed forever. Kev, your thoughts on A Long, Long Time?
I loved the start of it. I loved that Joel still had the cuts and stuff in his hand, and he was putting them in the river, and he still hasn't properly healed yet. I didn't know what to make of that. The stacking, is it like a tribute to Tess, or is it?
Apparently, it's like an ancient. I think I read on Twitter. It's an ancient India. I didn't understand it either. It's like an ancient burial routine for like hikers who get lost along the way.
Okay.
I think I could be getting that wrong. Again, Twitter, a lot of stuff gets said on Twitter, especially in the Elon Musk era. So like again, don't take my word for it. That's blame whoever said that.
I'm sure there's lots of different meanings in culture for it, but I thought it was nice though. Like it was a nice little touch, and I just loved the immediate kind of conflict of I'm not saying sorry. Well, I don't wait to say sorry.
Yeah.
It was brilliant. Like, and then they kind of just just then asking about how this all started as well, and we get Joel's kind of accounts of how he thinks it started, but like he's not really too sure as well. But it's kind of a good vague idea of it.
Which is mad, like if you think about it, because it's like they're 20 years into the apocalypse. You'd think you'd not, you know what I mean? Like we knew everything about COVID, like within a few days, you know what I mean? Now we do kind of, again, the vaccine's far away and stuff like that as well. But like when you compare it, it's like, it's mad. But again, it kind of speaks to the speed. And Joel explains, it's like, again, it's not a plot hole. Joel is like, it started on Friday. People started biting on Friday, and by Monday it was over. Yeah. So like, it just speaks to how quickly the world just disintegrated, essentially.
2-day apocalypse.
Yeah, exactly. But 20 years later, they're still like, I think it was the flower or something. I don't know. It's maddening. How could you live that way? Like you didn't know your world has ended, but you don't know how or why. That'd drive me insane as much as that.
But I loved the just the kind of start of their relationship a little bit. They're kind of chatting a bit more, and she's just appreciative of the fact that like he's telling her about like how he got his scar and just said like his version of how the outbreak happened and what planes were like and stuff as well. And I liked that because I think later in the episode as well, I suppose when they get to the shack that they end up going to, I loved the Mortal Kombat reference as well, but which was brilliant as well. Yeah. And even saying Melina's fatality as well. I'm a massive Mortal Kombat lore fan.
Love it.
And I love that they got that right in Mortal Kombat 2 and everything. But there was bits when they got to the shack of when she goes down into the basement. Also, what was she thinking, by the way? Not really searching out all of that basement.
Has she played the games? Like, come on. It's like first forage. You know what? Actually, I appreciate how they had a section of this for foraging. Like, because I was wondering,
totally,
like, even last week with the clickers, I'm like, Joel, come on, like, you need to build a shiv. Like, come on, why aren't you looking at any drawers here? Like, don't be shooting a gun. So I love how, because again, like, people, there is that old meme where they're like, people think The Last of Us is about like grief and death and how do you respond to the end of the world. But really, it's just about looking in cupboards for like, pieces of tape.
And squatting.
And squatting pretty much. Like, yeah. So I love how they had that. That was an interesting scene though, because again, like kind of there's when we spoke last, we didn't really have much of a chance to get a handle on Bella Ramsey as Ellie. Now we're kind of seeing her a bit more, and there are some changes that they're putting to the character. Like she's obviously the character evolves in a certain way, and kind of the incidents that happen that we're going to see over the next few weeks, and kind of obviously now it's been announced for a second season. They're going to kind of influence that, but we're kind of seeing now, I guess, in the game, like she's very innocent, and she's like, and there is an element to that. She's like, wow, a plane, a car. I'm just amazed by basic things that we're kind of accustomed to. But then there's also, she's a little psychopath, like, so she's become a bit sadistic. Obviously, in the first episode, we saw her kind of, almost taking pleasure in seeing Joel murder the security guard. But then today we saw like killing the zombie for sport and being really desperate to have a gun. What are your thoughts on you go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, just the cutting open of the stalker's face, and you can kind of just to see what's inside it, and just the face she's even making there as well was kind of a bit reminiscent of seeing Joel murder that guy in the first episode. And I know in the games she's a bit she's quite sassy, I think, at this part, and is constantly asking, I think, for a gun in the game around this time anyway. But that just felt a little bit more on the, oh, she's a bit sadistic. If she starts killing animals now, I'll be a bit like worried.
Yeah, and look, that's a plot point. Like there are
Yeah.
plot points in that where kind of, you know, again, it's more something in the game where you're kind of like, I don't know how I feel about that. I'm not okay with the fact that I'm like killing animals here.
Yeah.
So there is that, but it did feel like kind of someone who's picking the wings off flies and stuff like that. That's how that scene felt for me.
Yeah, and unless this is like, maybe it's gonna be a path she goes down that Joel has to bring her back out of, maybe as a plot point, might be kind of good as well.
Yeah.
But it's I think Bruiser said it in the first episode, and I was like, nah, she'll be fine. And then when we saw this, I was just kind of thinking, oh, you might have been absolutely right about that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's a really interesting angle. Obviously, look, we then kind of cut to Bill and Frank, and there are some huge changes from the game. For anyone who hasn't played it, I'll give you kind of a crash course in the differences. So in the game, first off, we never meet Frank. Frank has already died off screen. Like this scene, it's so like the polar opposite to what it was in this, because this is almost a nice, hopeful episode, and this part of the game is one of the bleakest parts ever. So Frank in this game has already died off screen after hanging himself, having become infected. And Joel and Ellie meet Bill, who's still alive, and is left alone. And as Joel warns Ellie, he's a bit unstable. Bill and Ellie then kind of have a little tete-a-tete. They've a really contentious relationship. Ellie is really cheeky to him and kind of pushing his buttons, noting that he's unstable. And later, Joel finds a suicide note where Frank says that he hated Bill's guts all along. And like, it's one quote from it is, I looked this up and it was like, trying to leave this town will kill me, but that's still better than spending another day with you. Which, having seen this episode and how beautiful their relationship was and how that is my now abiding memory of Bill and Frank, makes me really sad. But also as well, like kind of in the game, Bill warns Joel of the dangers of getting connected, whereas in this he pushes him towards. He's like, no, do get connected, it's worth it. I thought it was it. So like, it's really fairly bleak stuff, whereas this is obviously the tonal opposite. What are your thoughts on the changes here?
I kind of love it, if I'm being perfectly honest, because you can have, if you want to play the game, because the stories are very, very similar, if you want to play the game and get that version of the story, do it. But I'm really glad they veered off so differently in this, because you could just, if you put that part of the game into a TV show, it's a generic action set piece with maybe a monster of the week at the end of it. And it might be a bit badass and cool, but like it is in the game, and it's very tense in parts of it when you're hanging upside down and everything. But this was just so much more creative, and just giving that backstory as well, that like, it's really just subtly alluded to in the game that they're even in a romantic relationship.
Yeah,
it's a throwaway line in a letter, really, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, and Bill's, I think, like, I have a partner, and that's it. And he never kind of gets into it more. You kind of feel that he's, because there's a bit of hurt and there's a bit of emotion behind the way he delivers it, but that's it. That's all you get.
Yeah. And so going this way was just so left field, but so, like, if you're gonna give us this story, like you said, make it like the start of Up and just completely break everyone. And just having a doomsday prepper, I think, be that vulnerable from what you think a doomsday prepper would probably be like, I thought was an amazing idea, like, as well. And what better person than Nick Offerman to do this as well? Because when you see him like as Ron Swanson, and he's like gruff, but then Ron, when he lets his defenses down a bit, can be just so adorable and cute and sweet and nice, and just a really, what's the word I'm looking for, but just like a complete opposite, basically, of the persona he portrays a lot of the time as well. But yeah, I loved it. Really loved it. He
has that tenderness as well, like, and there's almost like, and that vulnerability that he shows is very jarring. Like, as they have their first meal, and then they play the piano, and Frank starts to break down his waltz. I listened to the HBO podcast with Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann, hosted by Troy Baker, obviously played the original Joel. And they spoke about this, and they spoke about, like, first off, wanting to have queer representation throughout all this, including the writing process, but also as well, like, kind of the one thing they honed in on was, they were kind of like, right, how do you navigate kind of trying to figure out if someone is the same sexuality, obviously, because it's a minority sexuality. So how do you try and figure that out? And the feedback that they got was some people you're guessing with, some people you kind of have a feeling, and some people you see them straight away, even if they don't know themselves. And they described this as Frank saw Bill straight away. And there's a scene, and I watched it again after listening to the podcast, and there's a scene in it where they first meet and Bill is holding him at gunpoint, and like Frank is kind of asking to come in, and Bill is kind of only taking Frank in and noticing him for the first time and kind of noticing, oh, I'm actually attracted to this person. And he hesitates. And he kind of just takes a beat and just kind of starts thinking to himself and looking at him. And then it cuts to Frank. And this is the last thing you see before you see them in the house together. And you know it's obviously worked. You just see Frank start to smile. And that's the moment where he goes, oh, I get it. This guy, he fancies me. You know what I mean? And then obviously they have that thing. But what I love about it is the fact that, first off, you know, you're getting Murray Bartlett, absolute legend, by the way. White Lotus season 1, Armand. If you haven't seen it already, check him out. He is iconic. You get that where obviously he is a gay man. He's comfortable. He knows the beats. He knows the scenarios and stuff like that, and how to play it and how to represent it and how to do it technically and this and that and the other. Obviously, Nick Offerman isn't. And he kind of picked up that, you know what I mean? There was a vulnerability and a discomfort and a kind of, you know what I mean? And there was kind of, you know, and he was able to kind of play on those feelings. And that was really effective, you know what I mean? Because there was almost a fear. There was the complete opposite of everything we've learned about Bill up until that point, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah.
And I love that. I thought Nick Offerman was perfect. What was your favorite moment from this episode, though? Is there anything that particularly kind of stood out or kind of hit you?
Oh, the strawberry patch hit me the absolute hardest. Like, it was. I also loved the conversation with Joel and Tess when they were kind of all sitting around the dinner. That led into him leaving that letter that these are the people we protect line. Or we're the motherfuckers that protect these people, I think it was. But I love that, and I loved what else was there? One of my favorite things, and I think it's going back to what you're saying about Nick Offerman as well, and just their first meeting when he's making him dinner, and Nick Offerman's kind of got this nervous energy about him when he kind of comes in the door with the 2 plates and kind of like looks up and just sees that your man's taking some dust off the mantelpiece. Yeah. There's just little moments like that is just creating chemistry between the two of them, and it's just the start of something. They just nailed it so much, and I loved little things like that. I also loved when they're just being at such a romantic state that it just cuts to them having this incredible argument as well. Like full-blown argument about decorating the electric fences, essentially.
I love the bits of humor as well that are in that, and that kind of touches on that as well, like, because it is, but there's bits of humor, but there's intertwined with such meaning that obviously plays the full way out. Because why are they arguing about decorating the fence? Because again, it's like, this is Murray Bart or Frank is like, this is how I love, you know, let me love the way I love, you know what I mean? And then the end of it, how they kind of talk each other into what happens at the end is kind of, you know, love me the way I want you to, and that ended up being a really powerful message. But I loved the bits of humor that were in this, and this is what I'm loving about the show as well, because I think this episode reminded me a bit of Station 11. If anyone's ever seen that, I don't know if you of yourself, Kev, but I'd really recommend it, because I talked about it in the episode where we discussed the first episode of something I binged over Christmas, and it's a post-apocalypse show, but it's one that chooses to look at, obviously it looks at all the horror that can happen, but it doesn't focus on that. It focuses on the possibilities of the nice things that can come from the apocalypse. And in this is a story about 2 people who essentially won the apocalypse, you know what I mean? So there were so much moments of joy and happiness because we got to share that kind of 20 years together throughout the course of the hour. There were bits of humor in it as well, where it's like, oh, you think the government are Nazis, and it's like, the government are Nazis. Well, they weren't then. Or like, what was it? So Joel's like, oh, I'd be the same when Bill's holding a gun to him, and then what is it? Frank is like, oh, you're a paranoid schizophrenic. And Bill goes, I am not a schizophrenic. Or even the letter, the powerful moment, and then it's I loved it. Amazing.
Like Bella Ramsey's delivery, that was just phenomenal though as
She's
well.
so good. She's so good. She's nailing it. She is absolutely nailing it. I
There
also
was a good bit of
love.
searching around the house as well when Bella was in, just looking in drawers. Love that too.
And then also, but as well, like they changed into the clothes from the game, and it's like, there
Ah,
they are,
yeah,
there they are.
yeah.
I
When the
love
red
it.
shirt popped up, I was like, amazing. That was brilliant.
Yes, I absolutely
Do you know
love
what
it.
else I did notice is when the first shot that they're in, when Joel puts away the rifle that he's holding, you get your first toolbox, I think,
Yeah.
of the series too. But there's certain little bits when she's moving stuff around in that back room. It's like it's kind of like, well, I think I've picked up on it because I've not seen anybody else actually talk about it. And I'm not sure if maybe it's just in my head of just sound effects of maybe like the tape wrappings and stuff as well
Yes.
that might have been in it.
Yeah.
But they're just really subtle though as well. But you're like, I think I recognize that bit because I'm playing the game a little bit and kind of
Nice.
as the series goes on. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
doing it as much as I kind of think the next chapter is going to be. And there's just like there's little bits. So just because a lot of it's just still fresh in my mind.
There's loads of Easter eggs in this game. Like, for example, we have the clothes you already spoke about. The car is also iconic. Everyone who looked at them when they're in the car together, you're like, oh yeah, that's the car. And then also as well, like you had I don't know if you noticed do you know the way it ended on the window? So that was a nod to the fact that every time you play The Last of Us, when you go into the main menu, it's a win. Yeah. So what they wanted to do was, and I'm glad they decided against this, but they still kept this shot in. What they wanted to do was, if you were watching it on a streamer, every time you went to play it, you'd go on the window and they'd have a button where it says press play. You know what I mean? So it felt like the game. But I'm glad they didn't go that route because that would have made it feel like a video game and just taking you out of the moment when this is such a real human show where you're buying in and investing in these people as real people. But I did like that thing as well.
That's such a lovely touch.
But also as well, when Frank said "Take Me to Bed" at the end, the song that they played was "Vanishing Grace Childhood," if you want to look it up. And that's used to set up one of the most iconic scenes that the original game is known for. Anyone who knows the game knows the scene I'm talking about. Real happy, kind of memorable scene. But that's the music from there. So again, they're kind of using that traditional music, but kind of repurposing it in this totally new light. The thing I kind of wanted to ask you was like, kind of, we are absolutely flying through the game storyline. And again, the series is better because of it, because we're so deeply mixed up in the story and the characters. And again, the show's already becoming absolutely iconic. You can't open Twitter. Like literally, I was looking at it yesterday. I'm like, lads, are we just deciding to spoil The Last of Us because everyone wants to talk about it? But it's taken over the world 3 episodes in. It's because we're just getting through the first game. And you can probably do the maths and figure out what's going to happen next. They're in the car. I think we can tell, if you know the game and know the beats of it, where the next episode is going to end and how that's going to kind of go from there. For me though, like I'm loving it, but I do want to spend more time with the characters we're meeting. Like I'm raging that we only got a couple episodes with Tess. We only got 1 episode with Bill and Frank. Like we won't see them again. Like they're gone now. It's almost too quick because I would eat up 5 seasons just going into this one game in like granular detail. Or is the series better for just taking off meatier chunks of the game?
I think it depends if they're gonna go to do more flashbacks, because like one thing I thought about the start of this episode was like, oh, they're not doing a flashback, and then it was like, no, the entire episode is a flashback. So
it's the same. I thought the exact same, but they had no cold open. I'm like, lads, come on. And then
I was enjoying those.
It was actually a full hour.
so unless they might do more of them, maybe to kind of pad it out a little bit. I know what you mean, because remember the first episode we did of this podcast, you were like, well, what's that one word that you're really looking forward to? And I was like, gymnasium.
Yeah.
And that's been completely cut.
Yeah.
By potentially by the looks of it now as well, because that's a part where you're with Bill. So they cut that. So I'm wondering, maybe there's going to be big changes kind of in the coming episodes as well, to flesh it out maybe a little bit more, if you kind of think they're going kind of quick. Maybe they're going to spend more time in certain areas potentially as well. But I hope we get a bit more characterization on maybe some of the other characters, and not just and I think that's probably what they're going to do.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. But again, like with the speed they're going, if they keep this up, it's like it's going to be a new person in every week, and then they're gone. They either like die or get moved on, or they there's a lot like still to go. So I'd like they're going very quickly. So again, I don't know if they have enough time to relent. There's only 6 episodes left after all.
They might get an entire Tommy episode, probably.
Yeah, Jesus,
just
like, how
Tommy.
do you fit that? Like I am trying to do the match because I know as well. Like I won't say what this means plot wise, but like Left Behind is in there as well. Like we've seen clips of that, so like that's probably going to be a full episode in itself because there's a lot in there. So like I'm trying to map out how would you do this over 6 episodes. There's still so much to get to. Like they could probably cut it in 2, but they are.
Have they said season 1 is going to be the first game?
Yeah, and they've announced season 2, and it's going to cover the second game. Now, season 2 and the second game is probably twice as big as the first game story-wise.
That could be.
So they have to split that. They have to. Like, and again, with stuff that happens, they really have to. But again, I don't know. But the thing is as well, like I know I'm asking questions, but I also implicitly trust after the 3 episodes we've gotten, I implicitly trust this. Here's a question that I have for you, though. Okay, as you kind of wrap up and kind of put a bow on this episode. There's a lot of comparisons to the likes of San Junipero and a Black Mirror, Ozymandias and a Breaking Bad, Pine Barrens and The Sopranos, like statement episodes. This is like what the show will be known for, and like episodes that are in the all-time Hall of Fame for television. I'm caught in 2 minds about this because on one hand, I'm like, was this one of the best episodes of television of all time that we've just seen? And the reaction might indicate as much because people are going absolutely insane for this episode. It's everywhere. But also, there's another part of me that's like, was it even the best episode of the show? And there's only been 3. Where's that falling for you? Kind of, what do you think?
It's definitely like it's one of the only episodes of a TV show in a long time that I think has made people really feel and probably cry their eyes out, I'd say, and it went completely left field the way you think it would go. And I think that's what makes it probably stand out, I think, as well. A really just touching story in a post-apocalyptic world. I don't know. I loved it. And it's one of the episodes as well that I probably will. I've only watched each episode once, but I'm probably going to watch that one again, I think, before next week. So it does say a lot about it, I think, as well.
It's mad because I was looking at IMDb and it's somehow the lowest rated episode of the season so far. Now, look, it's an episode about 2 homosexual men. There's probably a bit of toxic fan, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's an episode where also they went away from the games. So again, I don't put too much stock in these ratings because again, you'll have these pockets of fans that'll just shit on it for those kind of horrible, toxic reasons. Like, so I don't worry too much about that. But like, again, it is the lowest episode of the 3. But also when I look at it, I'm going to think about this episode. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In a way that last week was a really strong episode with the clicker and everything and Tess and kind of what happened. But like, I don't think I'm going to be thinking about that episode a year from now. I think I'm going to be thinking about this week's episode 10 years from now. You know what I mean? Like, because it really hit me. Also, as well, like what I'll never forget about the experience of this episode was obviously we know that the end of it, we don't know what happens with Bill and Frank, but we know that Frank ends up like hating Bill's guts. And as it kind of went on, I had this feeling of dread the entire time of like, how is this going to get to there? Like, what?
I was just about to say this about the episode. Like, that's why I want to rewatch it without this feeling of terror of I'm like, oh, someone's gonna die here or something really shit's gonna happen. So just being able to rewatch it with like, oh no, this ends tragically but very romantically and nice. Like but yeah, and also I love the touch as well where if nobody resets the music it just keeps on playing the 80s tune as well for Trouble. I loved that too. That was a nice little touch they put in. But yeah, there's the sense of dread of like, what's gonna happen here?
How is this is so beautiful. How is it gonna go so horrible where they hate each other? And you know what? In the game now, because this is my Bill and Frank. This is my headcanon now. Fuck the game. Like, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because this is so touching. So now I'm like, Frank's a bit of an unappreciative dickhead. all Bill did was care for him. Like,
also, fair play to them for not really having that much attacks on their fence in 10 years.
Yeah, it's a really good fence. It's that aluminum coil. It's that coil that Joel got him. He gets some good shit, baby.
Yeah, and I loved as well the sparks from the buzzsaws were what ignited the gas and that made
Yeah.
the flamethrowers. Like, that's fucking
Oh, it's
genius.
so good.
Like,
Or like the secret gun, like where
oh,
he's sitting
yeah.
watching watching it over dinner, like, and he's just like. But also as well, like Nick Offerman, the strawberry scene. Another little thing that I love, the strawberry scene. Nick Offerman, and we know this from if you watch Parks and Recreation, he does a really funny kind of girly giggle where it's like,
Yeah.
when he's on the strawberries, he just it was just like, that is adorable and works at the moment, but also fucking hilarious. Peak Nick Offerman. So that's the episode. Amazing stuff. Loved it. And again, can't go wrong. Fantastic. The Last of Us, absolutely. For me, I like, again, I know I asked the question, but again, like what I'm looking at now and where I'm judging this is this one of the best series of television? Like by the end of it, like 3 episodes in, they're pretty much perfect. They're playing a perfect game here. And in a way that I don't know we've ever seen a series of television do. And I'm so happy because it's like, I tweeted this out earlier and I've said it before. Great stories are meant to be shared. I have said for so long and I've wanted to share The Last of Us with everyone that I knew, and now the world is buzzing and we're getting to see it, and I love that. I'm so happy, and it's just a testament to how well they're doing, and I'm so glad that for a game that I cared about this much, they're doing it justice and they're doing the thing. They have announced that the second series has been announced, and like we said, it's going to focus on the second game. I won't get into reasoning or anything, but very controversial, split the fan base, huge toxic discourse around it at the time. Like it's much more conversation piece. I love it. I think there, in many ways, it could be considered better than the first. But like, again, it does split the fan base because of certain things and certain decisions. I know you haven't played it. Are you gonna like look into playing it once this is over, or do you want to kind of follow the TV show and then kind of play, or like kind of where are you thinking of around that? Like,
no, I think I'm enjoying what I'm doing at the moment of playing little sections of the game from where I think the TV show is going to go, and I'm actually doing kind of well at that at the moment. So I'm just kind of playing little bits. But as soon as the TV show is done, I think it's going to hype me up to want to play the second game. To be honest, because I'm playing the first game at the moment too. It's probably gonna hype me up to want to play the second, because it's just been sitting here for ages and I just have never got to really the chance of doing it really.
Oh, wow.
There's always been something else.
Yeah. it's amazing. I'd recommend it because a lot of playing The Last of Us is about you are the characters and you're empathizing with them, and a lot of it is you're feeling things that there are things in the game where you're like, I have to play as this character and I don't want to do this, but I have to go through it. And you feel the emotions of the character. And there's a lot of that. And the game is around that. So it's going to be a completely different experience. And as we see, you might think you know what's going to happen, but they'll just do an episode like this and they'll just twist it anyway. So you can kind of have the best of both experiences anyway, if it is something you want. Anyway,
I did have one of the creatures spoiled on me, but that's about it.
Okay.
Which creature? I won't. Just
Okay. Well, we'll say nothing, but yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, there is some big spoilers out there, so be very careful on Twitter. I've seen things that are just huge, just like absolutely thrown away. So be tread with care, guys out there. Anyway, look, they're absolutely nailing it, and I'm loving these conversations with yourself as well. So can't wait to have more discussions and continue to get into this, because like I said, great stories are made to be shared. Kev, absolute pleasure as always.
Thank you so much.
Check out FANGCLUB on Spotify. Is there anything you're kind of doing at the moment, or anything and you want to plug or mention, or is that will we save that for a later date?
We are just recording music at the moment, so something will be out later in the year. So
amazing.
I'll you'll know when.
Keep us updated. Don't worry, I can't wait. Exciting stuff. Chat soon anyway, Kev. Thanks for joining us as always.
Man. Thank you.